This video is about journal article publishing, and in particular, I will be talking about how you can build your paper's argument. That is the main argument that should carry the entire research paper or your research article. It is a very important topic, and you should start it before you go and delve into writing an abstract and everything else. But how do you know you have an argument, which is something that every single research article and study should have? But before I go into how you can write an argument, what is a good argument, etc., I would suggest going back and checking out the first video that I did in relation to journal article publishing, because that video will go through putting how you can put a strategy to write a research article in the first place. The material for this video is supported by an important book by Wendy Belcher, which I highly recommend, from 2019, and it's the second edition, called Writing Your Journal Article in 12 Weeks, A Guide to Academic Publishing Success. There are many books about writing. This is one of them, but it's really a useful one if you wanted to have like a step-by-step guide to journal article publishing. So before I get to discuss how you can build your paper argument, and a strong one, it is important to understand that the main reason why articles tend to get rejected is because there is no clear paper argument, or that your argument is not stated properly and early on in your paper, that is in the introduction. So if you want to increase your chance of publication, you got to sharpen your article's argument. But what exactly is an argument? How does it differ from a topic? And how does one go about making an argument? I'll explain each of these in the next few slides, but one model created by Stephen Tolman in the 1950s, which Belcher talked about, was that a good argument has at least 3 parts. It has got grounds, that is your data or evidence, a claim, that is what you aim to show, and also a warrant, that is the assumptions or principles that link the claim that you're making to your data or your evidence. It takes time to get this right, to get this skill. So we'll look now into how you can make an argument, and a decent and appropriate one to help you. So an important thing to know about arguments is that you are trying to persuade someone by engaging them, engaging their doubts, and also then you provide evidence to overcome the doubts that people have when they're reading your paper and your statements. So having said that, what is an argument exactly? Belcher defines an article's argument as the single significant idea of your journal article that is written in 1 or 2 sentences early on and clearly in your article or your paper, and around which your paper is organized, emerging from a linked to some literature, and supported with evidence to convince readers of its validity. So having just explained what an argument is, try to now you can pause this video, try to write down in 1 or 2 sentences what you understand your paper's argument to be, and we can work from there with the next slides that will give you more information. So having just wrote your article's argument, let's have a look at some tests to help you know whether what you have written is an actual argument or not. And Wendy Belcher's advice is that your argument doesn't need to pass all the following tests, but at least one of them. First of all, check after writing your argument whether you can say a simple agree or disagree. Belcher gave an example of the following. Bilingual children do better in school than monolingual children. She considered this statement an argument because this will need evidence to dispute it. It is a strong statement that we are making. Second test is the gut test. If you say the statement out loud, do you feel calm and do you feel normal, or do you feel that you are on the edge? The former indicates that your statement if you are feeling, calm and normal, that indicates that you don't have an argument. Because the latter signals that you are about to get into a dispute with scholars, which actually shows that it is more of an argument. Third, another test you could do is relational. Test whether people see your statement as an argument or not. Do they argue with you, or do they look puzzled? Do they look unsure of the statement that you're making once you tell them? And fourth, you can also do an intellectual test to see whether your statement is an answer to something people have actively wondered about. Now, sometimes you may think you have created an argument, you have written an argument, but it ends up not being an argument. And the following tests, which will help you establish whether your statement is not an argument of your journal article. So first of all, do a topic test. Does your statement start with, I'm looking at, I'm examining, I'm exploring, I'm interested in? Starting with these words usually imply your article's subject or your topic. A theory, a problem, a solution, an object, a text, an artist, etc., rather than a stand about these. So don't confuse your topic or your subject, the subject that is of your article, with your argument. Second, do an observation test. Distinguish observations from arguments. Check if your statement is not explaining anything, because this indicates that it is more of an observation rather than an argument. Also, you can do what Belcher called an obvious test. That is, your statement is check if your statement is very broad, that you can't dispute it. For example, saying something like, I demonstrate that sexism harms women is not wrong, but they indicate common beliefs that no one would dispute. So it's very general, really. It's very broad. So in this case, what you need is to go from a vague one and a general claim to a clear and a more specific one. Another thing you could do is a variable test. Do you start a sentence with, I'm looking at how X impacts Y? If the answer is yes, then you are talking about your variables or the factors that you've investigated, which is not your argument. So instead of saying this paper shows how rates of gun ownership affect death rates, this is a statement of variables. You could argue that gun ownership increases death rates. So check if your statement includes the how and why. Also do a gap and overlooked test. Check whether what you are stating in your studies, if your study significance, and you are talking about the significance of your study and not an argument of your research. If you start your statement with, I argue that there is a gap in the literature, or something along those lines of overstudied, undervalued, etc., then all these are claims for significance, claims about the value of your entire article. They are not arguments. Another test to run is a speculative test. Check if what you are stating is a speculation, or what Belcher called applied wishes. Your argument should not be what you aspire for the world. If you start using words like, I argue the world will be better off if it, or if you do X, then it will have Z, and so on. Notice the will here is a speculation, not an argument. This is more of a recommendation. So go back to your paper and check what the argument that you're making is for this recommendation. So now that I went through some of the tests to see whether you have an argument and if you don't have an argument. So how do you go about creating an argument in the first place if you get stuck for your research article? There are two formulas that Wendy Belcher suggested in her book. one by someone called Stephen Posesta, and one by her. Stephen's formula is simple. It uses although, nevertheless, and because. It uses these words that I've listed on the slide in sequence to help you create your argument. It is about citing an idea already available, taking a stand, and then providing evidence to back it up. So you can use these words to start the sentence, make a statement about it, and then back it up with evidence to help you. Another method you could use is by the author herself, which is Wendy Belcher, which proposes using three things in sequence. First, write a problem that other scholars debated, argued, assume, or ignore. Second, write your case in relation to that debate in the literature, or in relation to the argument, assumption, or a gap. Then third, present your evidence based on your qualitative study, quantitative study, experiment, or field work, or any type of analysis that you are doing. So hopefully this video gave you information about building your research articles, arguments, and the tests that you could do to establish whether you have an argument, which is a cornerstone of every publishable research article out there. And if you also get stuck, what sort of ways you could use and formulas you could use to help you establish an argument, but not just an argument, a strong one also for your paper.